I think about most everybody's here, so try to get started. Seems like it's been forever since we studied this, but we will continue on down the road with some Messianic prophecies. We've looked at kind of two different parts of the Messianic prophecies. We've looked at those that are in the writings, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, some of those books, and now we've looked at the Psalms, and I want to move into the book of Isaiah, and Isaiah is really just amazing, and really want to do mainly tonight is read several different sections out of the book of Isaiah. And as we read those, you will recognize that they have been fulfilled in the New Testament. So I got a bunch of stuff, but I thought if we go back and forth from every connection to every place in the New Testament, we'll wear ourselves out, and we'll be bored to tears. Now, you may be bored to tears by just reading some parts of Isaiah, but I think as we think about their messianic nature, you will go, boy, I didn't realize there was so much in Isaiah, because there is a ton in Isaiah. So I want to spend a little bit of time, not much, but a little bit of time on the background of Isaiah, because it will help us understand what we're fixing to look at and the significance of it. So Isaiah is just called by a lot of scholars the Messianic prophet, and he is called a Messianic prophet because his book is filled with Messianic prophecies. Now, Isaiah's book, we've asked this question about David and in the Psalms, whether Isaiah knew these were Messianic as he wrote them, I do not know. He was obviously guided by the Spirit to write them. I think he probably thought he thought they were prophecies, but I don't know that he knew all of them were going to be Messianic. I think he knew Isaiah 53 was going to be Messianic. So when he talks about the servant, or he talks about the branch, he will talk about the suffering servant in Isaiah 53. And I think he knew those were going to be about the coming Messiah. But then there's a lot of other stuff in there, kind of like in the Psalms, that he will just include as he's bringing a condemnation down on the Babylonians. Then there's a Messianic section right in the middle of it. So I don't know what Isaiah knew throughout, but at any rate, Messianic prophet, there are well over 100 Messianic prophecies in this book. And when we get to chapter 53, I didn't count them. We'll count them when we get there. Over 20, maybe 25 or so in Isaiah 53 alone. So there's a lot of them in here. One of the things that I think is super important about Isaiah is that up until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, because of the prophetic nature and the specific nature of these prophecies, Isaiah was thought to have been written by skeptics, not by Christians, but by skeptics. They would say that these events were written after the New Testament time, because there's no way. It had to have happened. He had to be reflecting back and writing stuff and making it kind of look like prophecies. And that's so Isaiah was accused, the book of Isaiah was accused of being that way. However, with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, we did find, I didn't check, 2 or 3 almost complete scrolls of the book of Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Matter of fact, the first cache that they found had one of the best Isaiah scrolls in it, and it dates to 100 BC. Now, the previously oldest one we had was dated 900 AD. Now, the reason it was dated that long, you may be familiar that as the Jews copied scrolls, that they would copy a scroll and then they would have a burial for the previous one. So they viewed it as that holy that they weren't going to just put it on the shelf and keep it. So the oldest one we had was about 900 AD. So it had been copied, and then the previous ones had been destroyed. However, when we found this copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it brought it back 1,000 years. That's how significant the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls was. Just absolutely incredible. So now we have more than one copy that is at least 100 years older than the New Testament period. So they're without question now, those prophecies were written before this stuff happened. There's can no longer be any question about it, and it is authentic Messianic prophecy to the specific nature that just absolutely is mind-blowing.
Do you remember the year that they found those?
47.
47.
Yeah, 47 was the first cache they found, and they have found several since. So I don't remember how many total we have, but several thousand now between the scrolls and the fragments, just from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
So it wasn't too many years that these people were believing it was written after.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been since 1947.
Oh,
47.
Yeah,
1947. Yeah, so I mean, it's just within the last 75 years.
Yeah.
So it used to be a lot shorter than that back in the day. It used to be 50 years, but now it's 75. But anyway, it's been one of the great discoveries. So Isaiah wrote this series of discourses over a period of about 50 years or so. That's a pretty rough estimate, but 50 years or so. It was in the second half of the 8th century BC. So that's when he wrote this stuff. So this is the time, at the time that he begins his discourses, Assyria is in power. So we remember the time of the Assyrians. Later on, the Babylonians will come in. 2 Kings chapter 15 through about chapter 18 is the period of time that we're talking about, at least in connecting it with the Old Testament series of kings that were alive during those times. 2 Kings 15 through 18. Isaiah was a contemporary of Amos, Hosea, and Micah. So 2 of those guys spoke to the northern kingdom, 2 of them to the southern kingdom. And it was also, if you remember, Jonah did all his stuff with the Assyrians, with Nineveh, the capital city, and all that. So Nineveh was close in time. He was probably a little bit before Jonah was, before Isaiah came on the scene. So that kind of gives you a time frame with some of the other guys. One other final interesting thing about Isaiah: New Testament authors will cite him either by name or by quote 22 times in the New Testament. Now, for a single Old Testament author to be cited 22 times, that is extremely significant. So again, that lets us see that Isaiah was indeed a strong Messianic prophet, and recognized by our New Testament writers that he was a Messianic prophet, and they cited him, they quoted from him as they saw stuff revealed to themselves, and obviously guided by the Holy Spirit. They were able to go, oh yeah, I remember that. That's in Isaiah. So we'll look at some of those as we go through. All right. Any comments, questions, anything I missed about Isaiah? Anybody wants to throw in there? Okay. All right. So over 100 prophecies in here, and let's just kind of start in chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. Is what is considered to be the first of his messianic prophecies. Hold your finger. So what I'd like for you to do for a little while is kind of hold your finger there in Isaiah, and I want for us to go and look at some of these New Testament verses. It's really interesting to read them both together, but again, we're just going to run out of time because there's so much there. I do like this John chapter 12 passage, however. John chapter 12, verse 41. So in 12:41, so this is Jesus speaking. And he said, "These things Isaiah said, because he saw his glory, and he spoke of him." So if you look back up at verse 40, this is the, I'll go back up to 39. For this reason they could not believe, for Isaiah said, He has blinded their eyes and has hardened their hearts, so that they would not see, and their eyes perceive with their hearts, and be converted, and I would heal them. So Jesus says, Isaiah spoke of this. This was Isaiah. He spoke of me in that I was going to do this. Now, go back to Isaiah 6, and here's what's interesting about this. When it says that Isaiah saw his glory, and that's what he says down in verse 41, we read in Isaiah chapter 6 where some of this stuff is mentioned, and we have basically the call of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 1, in the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne. According to Jesus, who did he see? What did Jesus say? He saw me. Now, isn't that cool? Isaiah chapter 6, Isaiah sees Jesus sitting on the throne. Now, to me, that just blows my mind. It just brings tears to my eyes. That is so neat. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of his robe filling the temple. Seraphim stood above him, each having 6 wings. 2 he covered his face, 2 he covered his feet, 2 he flew, called out to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Foundations of the threshold trembled at the voice of him who called out with the temple, and the temple was filling with smoke. Then I say, Woe is me, I am ruined, I am a man of unclean lips. I live among a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew and put the burning coal on my hand, and then we can read through the rest of that. Anyway, I just think it is so interesting that Isaiah saw Christ's glory. That's according to Jesus. And we go back, and this is where Isaiah looks up into the heavens and sees this. Now, did that wording remind you of any other passage of Scripture that you might have read before? Isaiah 6, 1 and following. Yeah, so some of that exact figurative language is used in the book of Revelation. See, one other verse had come to mind. Anybody else? There was another verse that come to mind. Anybody remember what that was? Perhaps some stuff over in the book of Daniel. I'd have to go look in Daniel. But for sure some of the writing in the book of Isaiah. So when we start this study and we're in chapter 6 and we're already have Isaiah look at Jesus in Isaiah chapter 6, you can see the rest of this book is pretty amazing. It's pretty neat. It starts that way. All right. Down in verses 8 through 10, back in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And he said, Here am I, send me. He said, Go and tell this people, keep on listening, but do not perceive. Keep on looking, but do not understand. Render the hearts of this people insensitive, their ears dull, their eyes dim. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and return and be healed. So, again, Jesus will teach in parables. And in Matthew chapter 13, he will quote this. He will refer back to this. And when somebody asks him, why are you teaching in parables? Why are you doing this? This is what he quotes. He quotes from what Isaiah said the Messiah was going to do. Okay? So, Jesus taught in parables for a couple of different reasons. He taught in parables, one, because he's got to, kind of like we talked about this morning, he's got a will of God to finish. People can't figure out who he is too early, or they're not going to kill him. And they've got to kill him. As horrible as that sounds, that's just the truth. So he spoke in parables, knowing they couldn't understand him. And that is the same commission that was given to Isaiah as he goes and talks to the Jews. So now, did Isaiah know that this was a Messianic prophecy? That's one of those places I don't know if he knew. Jesus knew. But I don't know if Isaiah did. Because this was Jesus telling him, when you go to the people, this is what's going to happen. And then the same thing repeats itself with our Lord, which we've seen in a lot of these Messianic prophecies. they have dual fulfillment. Maybe not all of them, but most of them have dual fulfillment. Once in the time they're given, and once with our Messiah. Okay? All right. Again, I thought that one was pretty neat. This one we're all familiar with, Isaiah chapter 7, down in verse 10. The Lord spoke to Ahaz again, ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it deep as Sheol and high as heaven. Ahaz said, I will not. I'm not going to test the Lord. And he said, listen now, O house of David. Is it too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men that you're going to try the patience of God as well? So, if you look back up to the first part of chapter 7, they are at war, they are in rebellion, and so God is kind of getting on to them through Isaiah. Straighten up, come to me, straighten up, guys, because this is looking bad. And then in verse 14, he will say, therefore, so there's coming a time when stuff's going to change for them. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and will bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. And that prophecy was made 800 years before Jesus ever shows up on this planet. And for that, you can see, as specific as that is, and then reading the record that that's indeed what happened, you can see why some of the skeptics were going, that had to have been written afterwards. There's no way, that he could have known that beforehand. But indeed he did. So anyway, very, very neat there. So down to chapter 8, verse 14. Let's pick up the pace just a little bit here. 8:14, he talks about there is a rock of offense. And Peter will quote that verse in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. That he, as the coming Messiah, people will stumble over the stumbling stone, if you will. They won't believe that he is indeed the Messiah. He's called the rock of offense because they will not acknowledge him. Chapter 8, verse 16 through 18. There's a phrase there. Isaiah writes, I and the children, and then the Hebrew writer will go back and grab that same phrase as he's talking about the Messiah in Hebrews chapter 2. So we know that is also connected to the Messiah there in chapter 8. In Matthew chapter 4, Jesus will leave the region and he goes to the area of Zebulun and Naphtali. Okay? And it's like, that's weird. Why is Jesus going there, and what does that have to do with, anything? Well, you go back to Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 7, and in, I think it's verse 1, maybe, it's very early in that chapter. Take a peek real quick. It's verse 1. He will make this reference to those two areas. And so Matthew is going, oh, by the way, that was Messianic. You probably missed it when you were reading through that, but that was actually Messianic. That had to do with our Messiah and the way that our Messiah was going to travel. So again, that one was pretty neat. Over in chapter 11, let's see, before we go, one other in chapter 9, I don't have this one written down. Not real sure why it's not written down right there. But down in verse 6 and 7 are in that reading. In Isaiah 9, verse 6, it is another one of these passages that when we read it, we recognize its fulfillment in the New Testament. I don't know that there's a specific verse that grabs this. Now, again, there may be. I don't have it written down here. But here's 6 and 7. For a child will be born to us, a son will be given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders. His name will be Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. All that sounds familiar to us. That's all beautiful descriptions of the Messiah. There will be no end to the increase of his government or his peace on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it, to uphold it with justice and righteousness from then on and forevermore, Isaiah writes. And the zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. So again, a beautiful section there, verses 6 and 7 from Isaiah 9. And again, obviously Messianic. We recognize that as a reference there to the Messiah. All right. Chapter 11, really, and you'll see I did the whole chapter there. Chapter 11, verses 1 through 16. This is one of those chapters in Isaiah where there are little bits and pieces that are mentioned in the Gospels, or not necessarily in the Gospels, but in the New Testament. And you go back and you read that entire chapter and you go, you know what? Kind of like we did with the book of Psalms. That entire chapter is Messianic. Because you can read things and you go, oh, yeah, I see that now. After you study through the New Testament, then you can read through some of these chapters and really pick up, oh yeah, that whole section there is Messianic. Some of the phrases that are used here in chapter 11, the wolf will dwell with the lamb. Again, a beautiful picture of the church is what that is. The wolf will dwell with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion, and the fatling together. And that's what happened when the church was established. We're all one. We're all together. There is no longer, sheep and leopards and lions. We are one. Verse 6, a little boy will lead them. Also the cow and the bear will graze, their young will lie down together, the lion will eat straw like the ox. The nursing child will play by the hole of the cobra. The weaned child will put his hand in the viper's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all of my holy mountain. For the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, just as the waters cover the sea. Now what a beautiful description. And as we look back on that, we see that is Messianic. That is a description of the church and the protection that we have in Christ Jesus. Again, beautiful, beautiful passage there in chapter 9. Chapter 11. And then there's a couple of New Testament references to some of the verses. I don't remember what either one of those say, so I might run over there and at least grab Romans 15:12. I think that this is a phrase that Paul grabbed out of that chapter. Let me look real quick. Romans 15:12. Yeah, so he quotes, again, Isaiah says. So here's one of those phrases that is mentioned. There shall come from the root of Jesse, and he shall arise to rule over the Gentiles, and in him the Gentiles will hope. So that is found over there in chapter 11. I don't think we read that little section. That's actually in verse 10. I don't think we read down that far. And then Romans 11:5, I think, is another reference that Paul makes to this same chapter. Let's see. Romans 11:5. Same way, there will also come at the present time a remnant according to God's gracious choice. So in chapter 11 is a description about the remnant that will come out. It's later on in that chapter. So Paul making a couple references there to chapter 11. But again, we see a large portion of chapter 11 being Messianic once we get into it. All right, back in Isaiah chapter 13 verse 10 talks about the sun will be darkened, the moon will be hidden. Of course, that we know that happened at the crucifixion, Mark 13:24. Isaiah 28:16, I lay a stone in Zion. One of my favorite passages in the entire book of 1 Peter, and that is a quote from Isaiah chapter 28. See, I lay a stone in Zion. Isaiah 35, verses 5 and 6. Let's look at this one real quick. This again is an interesting prophecy because of who all it includes. All right, Isaiah 35. All right, so let's read. I'm going to start in about the bottom, it's the last two lines in verse 2 of Isaiah 35. And I'm going to read 3 or 4 verses. They will see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Encourage the exhausted, strengthen the feeble. Say to those with anxious heart, take courage and don't fear. Behold, your God will come with vengeance. The recompense of God will come, and he will save you. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened, the ears of the deaf will be unstopped. The lame will leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute will shout for joy. For waters will break forth in the wilderness and streams in the Arabah. Now, Matthew chapter 11, verses 2 through 6. Anybody remember what's going on in Matthew chapter 11? Anybody remember who came to Jesus going, are you the Messiah? John the Baptist's disciples come. And you know what Jesus quotes? Is this. Go tell John. The blind see, the deaf hear, the lame walk, and the gospel's proclaimed. So, Isaiah 35, 5 and 6, not only is messianic about Jesus, Jesus grabs it to let everybody know, okay, this is messianic about me, but it's also it's about John the Baptist. Because that's what John the Baptist needed to hear in order for him to go, oh, I got the pieces put together now. Somehow Jesus knew that. Again, it's such a neat connection there in chapter 35. And again, the idea that Isaiah, is able to write something that connects all of those pieces together, those moving pieces in the New Testament, again, is just pretty amazing to me. Pretty amazing. Isaiah chapter 40, verses 3 through 5. Go ahead and turn over to chapter 40, Isaiah chapter 40. This is another one of these chapters that is filled with messianic stuff. It's only mentioned, again, a time or two in the New Testament in only little short segments. So this one is referred to over in Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3, in the first 6 verses of Luke 3, talking about John the Baptist preaching. He is the voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the paths of the Lord. So over in Isaiah chapter 40,